Do you know what self-development is? Could you explain the process? Stay with us, for that's what we'll be talking about on this episode of the Evolving Warfighter. You may ask yourself the question, why do I need self-development? I've already invested heavily in terms of time with Army education and Army training. I worked very hard and very long hours in my operational assignment. Why do I need to do more? And the answer is this, that self-development is a great tool for filling in the gaps of your knowledge and optimizing your leadership ability. If we look at the great military leaders in the past, almost all of them have been prolific self-developers. In fact, civilian research has found numerous advantages in self-directed learning. This includes increased ability to adapt to a changing circumstance, increased resilience, more job satisfaction, better communication, better building networks of sharing information and learning. All these advantages and more are waiting for you in the domain of self-development. While the Army has used several different definitions of self-development, I believe the best definition is the one presented in the Department of Army Pamphlet 350-58, displayed for you here. If I had to put self-development into my own words, I would say it's any voluntary learning engagement an individual does to address their personal weakness or to explore areas of their own personal interest. As I mentioned earlier, even civilian scholars are studying the concept of self-development. However, they often use the term self-directed learning. This comes from a scholar named Dr. Knowles. He became famous for his studies on how adults learn. He's actually commonly referred to as the father of adult education. Here is his definition of self-directed learning. I actually like using his definition of self-directed learning for a concept of Army self-development. There's only one thing that I would add to perfect this definition for the military context, and that is to ensure that you understand that self-development is a cycle of assessments and reassessments. Self-development is not a process that we do once, but a process that we do continually. This is why it's sometimes also referred to as lifelong learning. For those of you that have never engaged in self-development, let me tell you the process of getting started is relatively simple. I recommend that you begin with some type of assessment. This assessment can be done either informally or formally. To do an informal assessment, just take some time to reflectively think about where you are in your life. Think about your skills and abilities as a leader and as a soldier. Most of us will instinctively find areas where we wish that we were better. It could be some type of skill that we wish that we could improve, or some type of ability that we wish we had. You could also turn to formal assessments. Luckily, the Army provides you several opportunities to have formal assessments done for you. You could turn to areas such as the multi-source assessment finder. Additionally, you can talk to your supervisor during your quarterly counseling processes to get your OER and NCOER. It's a great way to have them tell you where they perceive that you need to improve and work on your leadership and soldiering skills. You could also turn to a mentor to help provide you some type of external input about areas where they think that you may need to focus on. Once you have a list of items you want to work on and areas you want to improve, now we can start finding resources to help support you along the path of self-development. For those of you just getting started in self-development, I recommend you check out the Army Leader Exchange Facebook page. This Facebook page is run by the Center of Army Leadership. They routinely post journal article, blog posts, and videos they find useful for self-development. This is a great way of understanding what materials are out there in the digital world to help you with your self-development. If you do a quick search online, you'll find a number of great military reading lists issued from the Department of Defense and the Department of Army to help point you towards books that are good for your leadership development. One of my favorite lists, which is actually broken down by rank, was written by the Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, when he was a Marine Corps General. Another great resource for self-development is the newly updated Army Leadership Development Improvement Guide. This guide provides self-development recommendations for each of the Army leadership dimensions. I'll leave a link in the description below. If you're just starting out in the field of self-development, don't be afraid to ask for help finding good resources. It may take you a while to develop the skills to identify what's useful to you and what's not. I'm going to challenge all the leaders out there that have already begun the process of self-development. Please tell us in the comment section below this video what are your favorite resources for finding self-development materials. The final step in self-development is reassessment. Take the time to evaluate what you're learning and what speed you're learning as you go across different self-development activities. If certain activities aren't paying dividends in terms of you gaining knowledge for them, don't be afraid to abandon that and try something new. Try to engage in learning activities where you're acquiring mass amounts of data. Keep in mind that all learning doesn't occur at the same time, and some learning tasks are obviously more time consuming than others. For example, if you're trying to learn a language, it may take several years to gain mastery. However, if you're trying to complete a college course or read a certain book, if you find you can't do these activities on a short-term basis, you need to reevaluate what you're doing. Either the self-development method that you selected isn't right for you, or you're simply not investing enough time to be able to complete that task. This reassessment process leads us back to step 1, where you are now, develop a plan for the future, begin identifying resources, engage in learning, reassess. And the process continues cycle after cycle until we become natural lifelong learners, constantly improving ourselves and our ability. Thank you for your time. I invite you to subscribe to the Evolving Warfighter for more videos on the topic of self-development. Additionally, I'll leave you a link here for the Army Leadership Exchange YouTube page. It's a great resource for finding more materials concerning self-development. Until next time, focus on your self-development so we can have the skills and ability to dominate the modern battlefield.